do you see a world down the line for a McLaurin level talent or somebody better than McLaurin that Bill Belichick would pay 23 plus $1 million for a wide receiver? Because that's the market, right? At least starting at 20. McLaurin's a really good one.
Right.
Got a little bit of extra. Mike Williams signed that 3-year, $60 million deal. That's sort of the baseline of where the market is going. A guy like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, those two have to be looking at this market and thinking 30 plus million a year by the time they're free agents. Do you ever see a world where Bill Belichick will pay a wide receiver that kind of money?
Not if he doesn't have to. I think some of the moves they made this offseason, right? You look at Devontae Parker trying to build a depth at that position, right?
Yeah.
And I think the idea is, they'd rather have 5 or 6 number twos than that true number one, and you spend the same amount of money. So I think he values depth more than top end talent at that position. Maybe if there's a guy he just really likes, he went out and traded for Randy Moss once, so I'm not going to totally rule it out. But I think unless the guy checks every single box for him, I think it's more going to be about depth at that position than getting that guy.
I guess we'll see if it works in this.
Or I guess let me add something to that. Whether it's Tyquan Thornton or next year, whoever, if you were to draft a guy that played up to that level, I could see him re-signing a player for that value. I think that if a wide, and I don't know if this is exactly the question you asked, but if a wide receiver is going to get a $20+ million year contract from the Patriots, I think it would be a guy they draft that pans out more so than a free agent or trading for a guy and then giving him a new contract.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the biggest problem that the Patriots run into in their minds with a lot of these wide receiver deals is it's not to get Terry McLaurin out of Washington, to use him as an example. It's not just giving him the contract, because the Commanders aren't going to let him just walk for nothing, right? So they're probably going to go the franchise route. Then maybe he gets franchised next season. He hits the market in 2023 or 2024, let's say, and then he becomes a free agent. But in all likelihood, he gets traded before that point if they can't get to a long-term contract extension. So it's the Tyreek Hill model, right? It's trading 4 or 5 draft picks or a first and a second, like the Raiders did for Devontae Adams, and paying the guy $30 million a year, right? So I think that that's where the biggest hangup is. The players that are worth that kind of money don't hit unrestricted free agency. I think next offseason, if Terry McLaurin was an unrestricted free agent and the Patriots could sign him without giving up anything, and they had all this cap space, then I think that they would offer him a market deal to come here and play football. But if you're going to have to give up the draft picks on top of it, that's a lot of capital, I think, that becomes invested into one player. And that's sort of where the buck stops. You mentioned having a bunch of number twos. That is the zig, right? Everybody is zagging. They're all paying everybody up the wazoo to come catch passes. The zag or the zig for Bill Belichick is Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, paying tight ends, which are obviously a little bit of a cheaper market than paying wide receivers. You pay Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith top of the tight end market. Unfortunately, when you start to read some of the tea leaves of what the Patriots have done in the last 2 off seasons, it seems like they're zagging when everybody else is zigging. And instead of paying one wide receiver, like you said, $23 million a year, they're paying 3 wide receivers $23 million a year. We'll see if it ends up working. And I think ultimately, for it to work, Mac is the X factor, right? Like Mac needs to elevate number twos and number threes and make Jacoby Myers or make Kendrick Bourne a number 1 wide receiver statistically, because he elevates that to that status. We'll see if the Patriots have that luxury, because they had that luxury with Brady. They could roll out Brandon Lloyd and Brandon LaFell and Dante Stallworth, and I'm just pulling names down, not any slight on any of those players, but they could pull out those players, Chris Hogan, and Brady would make them look great. We'll see. We'll see if Mac Jones has that, and it can get to that level where he's taking that supporting cast with him. I will also say that they're trying, at least in the draft, right? Tyquan Thornton's a 50th overall pick. N'Keal Harry in the first round in 2019 hasn't hit yet, but maybe they do go, okay, well, we're not going to pay anybody $25 million a year. But if we can get a true number one with a top 50 draft pick and pay him on a rookie salary, that's a much different conversation.